Hello and welcome to Game Warp, and as always I'm your host Edward Jones, and joining me is my partner in crime, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello!
Following on from our previous episode where we looked at developer Playdead's debut game Limbo, which after 6 months in development finally gave us a sequel of sorts with Inside, but was the wait really worth it? To help us find this out, we're joined once again by our special guest reviewer, Greg, aka Mr. Greggles.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Obviously, in the first time you were on our previous episode, we were talking about a featured game for September, Limbo. A game that myself and Kim, we gave it sort of middling reviews of 3.5. You rated it a little higher at 4. Obviously, this time it sees we returned with Playdead. This is a game, as we said at the start, they were developing for 6 years. And interestingly, they've come with some new tricks this time. It's not just a rehash of what we saw with Limbo. Right. What hasn't changed is a discernible lack of storyline, as this time we play as a nameless red-shirted boy, so a little bit of a surprise there. We have colour in this one. And basically you open to him running through a forest where he's running away from these guards who are clearly searching for him, and you basically going on this adventure to try and uncover this mystery that's happening in this sort of dystopian world that's slowly unfolding around you. Obviously, for those not familiar with Greg or didn't listen to our previous episode, you're a podcaster of both the Debatable Podcast and All the Pieces Matter.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, when it comes to play dead games, what is it really that about these games that appeals to yourself, that made you want to sort of come back for another round after Limbo? Because I would have thought that after Limbo, people would have had enough darkness from Playdead. They would have wanted to go off and play Castle Crashers, or at least Super Meat Boy, which has some color and some sort of humor to it, unlike the world of Playdead, which I think, as we noted on a previous episode, should come with the tagline, "We like maiming small children."
That's why I wanted to play Inside. More child death. No, I think that's probably what's true about it is that Limbo was all flaws included. I mean, it's still a great game in my opinion, and a lot of people I think really like clever puzzle games that are sparse in detail and use the environment, use kind of gameplay styles in an interesting, clever, and unique way. And I think that's what gravitates certain people to playing these kind of nostalgic vintage games or revisionist vintage games like Super Meat Boy and so on and so forth. But for me, it was like Portal and Portal 2 and these games that kind of use a mechanic in a very interesting way, and Limbo did it too. I like the elements of mind control that the worm had in Limbo. I think there's elements even more so in Inside with mind control, as we'll surely talk about. But there's just mechanics in there and gameplay that I think that really cinch in and work well with the concept and the settings that you're going to go through. There's again we go to factory levels, and again we're dealing with a bleak dystopia that I think we definitely had a bleakness in Limbo, maybe even more of a bigger bleakness than this movie. Than this game, depending on how you read the ending, the last stages of the game. I think we could touch on. There's different readings of that, but I think that if you're a fan of Blade Runner, if you're a fan of dystopian sci-fi and stuff like that, I think that this kind of gets perfectly to the point of why you would watch those or read those stories, is just getting to the point of kind of being the rebel, being the person to break out of the Logan's Run or any sort of dystopia where everyone is controlled, by an oligarchy or some bigger dictator of some sort. In this game, you're certainly expanding on the gameplay of Limbo, and I think that that's what attracted me to it. Not only Playdead, but kind of seeing that gameplay was coming back.
Okay. And Kim, I mean, obviously, for anyone who regularly listens to the show, that will obviously identify yourself as being, the happy one of this partnership. And when
I
we
don't know
were
why you
going
say
through
that.
when we were going through the games that we were most excited about when we were looking at the free release titles, this was certainly a game that you were very excited about coming out. And I don't know whether it's the fact I was just
and and just frustrated, right? Because the trailer was like 30 seconds of nothing, and then I was
Right.
like, what? But then you go and then you play this game, and then you kind of realize that this game, just like Playdead's Limbo, is about discovery. It's about your own discovery. It's about your own interpretation, and that's a very unique way of how to play a game.
Hmm.
I like Inside a lot because after I played Limbo, I got a little scared because I was expecting much more from Limbo. I expected myself to like it a lot more. And I was really worried that, oh, the puzzles are going to be really hard and it's just going to make me frustrated again. But Inside was very different. I felt like Play Dead learned a lot from
Hmm.
Limbo. It improved on some of the imperfections
Right.
on what they did, and rather than having like, yeah, like they still kept like using your environment like Greg says, and like there's much more of a vibrant storyline. Like the plot is flowing through the whole gameplay. And then at the same time, you also have like, there's also like the themes that they love: child endangerment, mind control, and just really messed up stuff that's going on, and some really traumatizing moments. But instead of like
Yep.
really frustrating puzzles, and that was really reliant on timing, this time their puzzles were more about like getting you at the edge of your seat. Because it was really like you would do something and everything, all your danger that came close to you was just so like last minute.
Hmm.
Like the dog chasing you and you have to jump off a
Yes.
ledge. The dog would be just right at your butt,
Yep.
and then right that's when you jump. And then but that's how the game is designed to be. And
Hmm.
that's what kind of makes you really nervous about playing this game. Oh, what are the dangers? And then you just
Hmm.
get really anxious as the game goes on. And I find that is so powerful. And I can keep going, but let's move to Elwood what he thought
okay.
about it.
I mean, I'm just gonna say straight off that there is going to be spoilers ahead. So if you've not obviously played Side, I feel that we've pretty much given you a good idea of what to really expect with this game, and you've probably seen from obviously if you're watching our YouTube channel now, you obviously see from the footage whether this is going to be the sort of game for yourself. But from this point on, we are going to be going into spoilers because this is a game where there is definitely more of a plot line than we saw with
Hmm.
Limbo. The problem I have with terms of the plot though is that it feels that like you're watching a movie, but you've hit the record, so it's chopped to the first 5 minutes of the film, and it's cut off the ending.
Hmm.
So you have this what feels like this meat of a story, but you have no discernible start and you have no
Right.
discernible end. It's sort of you're with this character for this however long a moment in time. I love the fact that it opens with it hits the ground running. You're there, you're sliding down the cliff, and you're on the run. You're straight on the go. You got people chasing you. It's like, why are these people after us? What have we done? Is he like seen something he shouldn't
Hmm.
have? Is he like
Right.
broken into a facility, being like, you know, some kid like just being where he shouldn't be?
I
Or is
thought
he
it was
escaped?
so
So
ET, I thought it was so ET. I thought it was like, the guys chasing after him in the woods.
yeah,
And I did not expect them to kill him either. I was expecting them to just, capture him by his collar and pull him back or something.
the whole opening chase sequence, I absolutely love. I love how there's a much more sense of 3D that you have
Yeah.
with this game compared to Limbo, which was very much on a 2D plane. This one, although it's still a 2D side scroller at heart, You have much more of an idea of depth.
Hmm.
There's more
The
things happening in
camera.
the background, and
Yep.
because of how the camera works, we also have a lot more abilities open to us. In particular, the fact that our unnamed character here can swim, which is certainly
Hmm.
a welcome addition after being drowned by the slightest body of water in
And not
Limbo.
having to walk on dead bodies.
Yep.
That's definitely a winner there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and we have the opening scene where you're having to swim under the water to hide from these people that are pursuing you. I just love this chase element that you have at the start, and it kind of slows off as we start to get towards like the farm, and we have that unusual pig jumping sequence, which I actually had to stop the game to message Kim about when we were the pre notes for this session. It's like, oh my god, you get to jump over a pig. This is certainly something new. Certainly something I wouldn't be expecting from Playdead, especially. But again, saying that, there's a lot of things which are very familiar now, which we come to expect from the company. As we said, gruesome deaths are aplenty in this. There is certainly more a sense of a set piece sequence throughout the game rather than with Limbo, which had all its set pieces in the first half. This one seems to keep the set pieces flowing throughout, but at the same time, there feels like there's a number of set pieces that have been included there just because they needed to include something, such as an early puzzle where you open the door to a barn and you have all these chicks follow you, which serve no purpose
Yeah.
at all.
Oh, I
Uh,
love it. I love it though. I love it though. The kind of like the way that it uses those chicks. What was it again? There was like a
Yeah, I
what did
blew
you
it
have
into
to
this
do?
thing to push down a hay bale.
yeah,
Yes.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
spraying the corn
Yeah.
feeder.
Yeah,
Um,
but you know, like you bring up this, and I actually made a point to talk about it because this is actually one of the things that is very amazing about Inside, and that is that they have a lot of subtlety in the game, whether it's the sounds, whether it's the like there's very little music. There's only music when like, oh, you did this right. So there's like this
Hmm.
looming music that kind of like bellows in the background for a second.
Hmm.
But they're talking about that part. It's actually a lot of people like I watched some playthroughs of Inside during and before and after or whatever. I guess this is a question I should ask you both. Did you realize that there was actually a chick that died in the process?
no,
No.
that's so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. See, no one realized that, and that's one of the bleak things that happens, and it's because when the chicks are following you, there's one that is actually very slow, and that's also kind of like mimics in the back when we have to gather like the 19 bodies,
Yeah.
19 like people, dude,
Yeah.
mind control. I don't know what you call them.
Right.
I have like
Drones. The drones. Yeah.
kind of yeah. And you have to gather them, and there's always one that's like hanging in the background. And with this one, actually, right after we throw all of them up, there's one that actually dies, and it's that little limp one, and it's really sad. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I don't want to move
Oh.
on. You'll see me like I'm like in my playthrough that I have on Twitch. You'll see me that I actually go back and I stare at it for a
Oh.
second, and I'm like mourning it, and I'm like, okay, I have to move on now.
Oh.
Yeah, so anyways, just continuing on the point, it's really like the subtleties. Like what I really loved is the environment. Just say the swim part that you were swimming part to avoid the guards in the beginning. The
Right.
rain falling on the water. It was the sounds are so authentic and so
Hmm.
just it's so absorbing. Like you get absorbed into this story and you just don't even realize that some of the sounds are there. Like I actually
Right.
cranked up my sound really loud just so that I can get all this like kind of really get in the experience of it.
The environments are so enthralling. Like, the that rainstorm, the fog and the mist, when you're going through that like cornfield and kind of everything that's leading you to basically the more urban and the more factory laden areas, and kind of as you're moving through and getting to these points of being like in that line with the security cameras, making sure that you're moving with the other people or the other drones, whatever they are, the other test subjects in the correct fashion, like all of that build up as it's building up to, further in the factory levels and then underwater and all that stuff. I just feel like the motivation, like the driving force, regardless of a narrative or story, I think is a lot stronger in this than in Limbo. I feel like, from area to area, it feels more organic. Like the bleed through is more organic. It makes logical sense how you go from one area to the next.
Yeah. I have to say that when we get into the factory settings of this game, I got very much the sense of feeling, the same sort of feeling that I got playing like Abe's Odyssey or Abe's Exodus on
Hmm.
the PlayStation, especially with the idea that you're utilizing the drones to through mind control
Right.
to assist you with moving like mine carts or to raise your character up to
Yep.
areas you can't jump and stuff. I really kind of enjoyed those sections, and there's a very extended sequence where you fly around in your little submarine. Um,
Mhm.
kind of got a little nightmares there of Song of the Deep again. It was
I was
considered
gonna
like,
say, yeah, a
but
lot less shooter heavy than that game, though, huh?
no, but we did get we get a mermaid,
That's
which no
true.
one can explain what it's doing there.
That's scary as fuck. Those mermaids are scary as fuck.
I
And
think the part that scares you the most is when like they haven't even appeared yet, but then they kind of there's like this part where you have to finish the puzzle and then you go back into your submarine and they
Yeah,
right underwater just swoosh past your screen, and
yeah,
at that part I jump at
yeah.
every time. It's just it's
I
so
just
freaky.
I hate I died a few times trying to figure out the mechanic. Obviously, they won't attack you if you have the light on them. But like I died a few times, and probably one of the more gruesome deaths for me in Inside is just seeing this mermaid break the glass of your little submarine and then get in there with you. It's just frightening.
I mean, there's a section where you drop down in the water and one of these mermaid creatures grabs you and it drags you down. And I thought, oh, I've died again,
Right.
mistake there. And the screen keeps going and you're being pulled down and down and then the music
Hmm.
changes. And I thought that was such a clever little twist there. They think, oh, this section where you could have easily just been that, you died again, but no,
Right.
it's serving a purpose. And although the actual intentions of these creatures is a little confused because in one moment they're trying to kill you, the next they're trying to help you,
Right. Right.
because they essentially set you up for the final part of the game with the powers they bestow on you.
Right.
But I mean, I wasn't trying to figure out how they actually play into the story because there's large portions of the factory which are flooded, which obviously have these creatures. And I'm thinking, these sort of another experiment? Is this like
Hmm.
a failed beta or something that we saw that something that they created and then essentially just forgot about and left to sort of
Right.
swim around these flooded basements?
I think that's the reading I was hinting at was, I think that there's a obviously I didn't get a chance to play this game until it came out on PS4 recently, because I don't have an Xbox One and I didn't play it when it first came out either on PC. But I think that playing it, I was like, wanting to hear, well, especially when I finished it, wanting to hear how people read the ending, and there were so many. There's a few different reads on the ending, but for the game as a whole, trying to sparse out that kind of narrative that's going on. And I think that's one of the things they touch on, Elwood, is the element of these kind of failed experiments, these things that are all part of this, obviously not hive mind, but this group of people that you're kind of a part of, and kind of failed experiments, definitely those mermaids, and probably the drones to a certain extent and everything, and how you use them to help you to get you to basically that final experiment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, if you notice in the game, actually, it really hints at the fact that we're getting deeper and deeper into the game as you go, like into the labs or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
because like as you go like in sector 1 and then you go deeper and it gets to sector
Right.
2 and 3 and 4. I don't know if it keeps going, but and then like nearing the like some ending more of the later parts, we actually hit a part where we walk through a room where you just see experiments that are just there.
Yeah.
And it seems like when you're walking down the line, it's kind of like they're inspecting you to see if you're good
Hmm.
enough to be part of their experiment. And if you're not, they're probably going to haul you away and toss you out or something.
Yeah, right. Or shoot one of those like what were they like wire rods into your
Oh
torso.
God. Yeah, the little like air taser things that you sort of stuck.
Yes. Yeah,
I
little
think
Yeah.
taser.
that and the shockwave room.
Yes. The
Um,
That
shockwave thing
was
was scary, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the most intense parts. I think that's where I think this I wanted to ask is what part because this game in general was super intense for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was as intense for you both, but like what part hit you the most?
Well, literally, the shockwave room hit me
Yeah.
quite a bit. Let's be honest. No, I really thought that those were well conceived and really intense parts. I mean, we talk about the timing being pretty frustrating in Limbo for some of those puzzles, and there were a couple parts that I got really stuck on in that sequence, especially trying to get the timing down right, especially with that part where you have to get up the ladder with
Yeah, the
that
rotating
little
plate.
the rotating plate. Yeah, that was that took some trial and error on my part. Yeah, those were intense. Those I agree completely. That was an intense part. I think that there were what I think Limbo gets what I think Inside gets even more than Limbo for me is kind of a sense of epicness and scale, especially when you're underwater and you get to like big corridors with these fans or like what looks like drowned ships and stuff like that. Those were really, I don't know why my claustrophobia was really kicking in those sequences. That was really pretty intense for me. And there's a scene where you have to get up kind of this little vent, and you open this vent between these two fans, and just like body parts fall out, like someone's already been hacked to pieces, and that really kind of shocked me. Yeah.
for myself, it was the ending. The ending,
Hmm.
it's very much like it steps up a gear. It's like you think that you got this game figured out, that
Right.
you're going along this sort of path, and as you said, we're going for the labs, and we're seeing all these things being hinted at, and then when we finally get to the core, the lab, where it's all been sort of leading to, and we cover across the high brain of the giant
Right.
blob thing, because the lead up into that, where you basically suck through the pipe, and then you're into the main containment unit, and you see all the scientists looking through the glass at you. None of them seem overly bothered the fact that you're in there with their prize sort of
Right.
subject,
Right.
and then they, that you're sort of like pulling the electrodes off, and then you get drawn into it. When you get dragged into the brain, the blob, or whatever you want to call it, that was a bit shocking. So I thought, oh great, that's another death there. But this is like a particularly nasty way to go.
Hmm.
But then you realize, no wait, I can control the blob, and I'm just going to go and tear stuff up now. And
Right.
you break out of the containment unit, and this was the game I wanted. They are like, you could cut off the fat of all the rest of the game and just have it as this creature escape from the rampage, where we're just open with you escaping from the containment unit, and the whole game is just you smashing through labs and corridors and dining rooms and stuff. That will be the whole game.
That would be
As
interesting for about 10 minutes, and then I think it would be like, where do you go from there?
you go on the run, you go on the run, you have people like chasing you. You're there
There's
having to like,
there's no clever puzzles. You're just gonna outrun and destroy every
Roll
person.
downstairs.
yeah, that's basically the thing, because it's so comical the way it moves, because it's
It's
basically
great.
this mass of limbs and flesh.
Yep.
So it has no sense of balance. So it hits stairs and it rolls down, or it runs into walls and just like creates this splat. But yeah, I mean the game itself, you would break the whole thing. Would you break out the lab, and then you would find like a store where you could buy like an overcoat and hat, and you would just like hide out in street corners while cars like drove past you or stuff like that. I feel that
This is a
there's definitely a game there.
fascinating sequel. I think you need to do
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
you email Playdead and be like, "This is the sequel I want to see. A mini sequel, okay? We got it.
it.
We have it all figured out."
but
Episode 2.
it's such a tonal shift because obviously we've got all this carnage that's breaking out with this monster that's on the loose, and the fact that you have these wonderful set pieces such as the guy who tries to escape through the door and he like puts the shutter down, you see him there with his smug face, and you like run over and you tear the door off.
Hmm.
And all while this is going on, there's no one actually dying apart from like one guy who I've heard a lot of people say is like the president of this company. And
Right,
that's
the
why
guy. Oh
he
yeah,
gets
yeah, that guy. Yeah,
he's
Yeah.
the guy that you knock out the office window. And again, this is something I tried replaying to see if you could like avoid him or something. But no, he even if you approach him in slow motion, he's just doomed.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was so unexpected. And again, this is something I messaged Kim about. It was sort of like, why did no one tell me you turn into a giant blob?
Because that's what makes it fascinating. This is the part that raises all the questions, right?
Right, right.
And I find that this is exactly the reason that this is a surprise in the game. Like, you never expect to be sucked into a blob. And what the heck is the blob? And what is this whole thing about? Is it an experiment? Was he actually, like, this is one of the questions I think that, in, like, the theory of everything, was the kid's past scripted the whole way? Was this just
Right,
an observation of everything that he was doing?
right. Well, they talk about that with the what do they call it? The diorama when you
Yes.
fall into that little diorama tank.
Yeah, because when we look at the diorama, it mirrors the final scene of the game.
Hmm.
And it brings up this theory of have we actually escaped?
Right,
Or is this just another containment unit
right,
that they built this model for to show like a representation of what they had planned,
right.
and that you basically stumble into it. And because I know a lot of people like brought up and it's like, oh, the light doesn't look natural because light doesn't fall this
Hmm.
way, so it must be fake.
Right,
And it begs that question. And when you get to the hive mind, it kind of makes you think: is the hive mind controlling the boy to free itself?
right,
Is it like drawing him in? Is it like
right.
communicating telepathically? So it sends him on this quest because he feels like compelled to go for all these areas. He's constantly heading forward.
True.
Even when he escapes the guards at the beginning, it's not like, oh, I've escaped him, I can go home now and just say, oh, that was a fun adventure. No, he's like put himself in increasing danger, and so he must be this feeling of being drawn. It's not that this is a way out because obviously he's choosing to enter into the factory. He's given multiple areas where he could obviously go off in another direction and escape this area, but he's choosing to press on forwards to constantly keep going forward through the different labs to get to this giant brain. So it made me wonder there's like that link there. And again, if we look at the secret ending,
Yeah.
Right.
which I kind of want to brand as being the missed ending, because essentially at the end, at the start of the game, if you've collected these orbs throughout the game, you have the option of having a much shorter game where basically you essentially unplug the brain or
Right.
you unplug
Right.
the system and your character goes limp. And I couldn't help that. Does this mean your character is like a clone, and that, as in war games, that the only way to win the game is
Right.
to not play the game at all?
Right.
Is,
It seems
is
it's
just me?
like it depends on what you want from the game, and I think what kind of game player you are. Because I mean,
Giant rampaging
if you
monsters.
say what.
Giant rampaging monsters. That's what I want from
That's
this
what,
game.
that's the type of game player you are. I feel like yeah, if you're trying to dig deep into the theory of it all and kind of like the kind of sad existence of what ending you get typically the real ending and versus this kind of secret area that you can get to if you do some button presses and collect all the orbs and everything. Eh, both of them are not. I don't know. It depends on the type of person you are, whether they are satisfying or anticlimactic. unplugging from the system feels so like Matrix like, it feels so like you said, the war games thing, not to play the game at all and not to be mind controlled. Even when you have a sense of control in the game, if you read the ending a particular way, it's not a victory. It's you've been mind controlled while you thought you were mind controlling the other drones. So during this whole time, if and in a way, if you extrapolate that even further, the game player is being mind controlled too, because you're playing the game in that fashion. So if you want to get really fucking heady about it, you could say that. But I think that I was really kind of disappointed with the ending, and not because it's a bad ending, just because my gut instinct was even more than the end of Limbo was that's it. That's
Yeah.
what I get, and I think that you could take like if you're trying to get a little bit of positivity out of it, and you didn't look too closely at the diorama, and you didn't like think too much about it, getting that blob to that that cliffside and getting some light on it after being in the depths of despair and factories and dystopia, having this kind of shaft of light warming up its body on this edge of this cliff. There's positivity there. There's hope, even if it's fleeting, even if it's not something that's really real or tangible or attainable. If you think about it afterwards, even as anticlimactic as it is, I'm sure, 20 minutes later, I'm like, that's a lot. This is something I need to think about because it's a lot deeper than would seem on the surface.
Kim, what's your do you have any theories that you want to share on it, or I mean, is there a theory that you choose to go with when obviously looking at this game? Because there's certainly theories out there, and it's so refreshing as well. The fact that they're very straightforward theories based on what you've seen. It's not like, oh, because it said number seven on this place, it must mean this because in the Bible number seven means this, and like these really far-stretching theories that whenever you have fan theories, it's like you get the sense that they're basically filling in the gaps themselves.
But
Uh,
if there's anything we learned from Playdead and Limbo and all that stuff and Inside, is that the more complicated you think about anything they're doing, it's actually probably a pretty simple idea. It's as simple as just noticing the details. Like Greg says, you notice the diorama, you notice like just where you are, you notice the numbers on the walls, and then you can make as many theories as you want about whether this is an experiment, whether this is scripted, whether this was just he was mind controlled the whole time, which I agree he was, because the secret level is for those who want to seek out the truth.
Right.
That's what it is. It's like if you really want the answer to the questions, go to the secret level. That's pretty much explains what this game is about. This kid was mind controlled the whole way, and you can take it that way where he was just this whole path was planned in a way where maybe they're trying to perform some sort of experiment on him to go through obstacles to I don't know. The thing is that I think the question is also what is the purpose of doing all this? What type of world has it become where it seems like it's kind of like a sunken world at the same time where
Hmm.
there's so much underground. It seems like a huge flood went over and then some people built an existence over it and now they're
Right.
trying to, I don't know, create a higher being or something. Play
Right.
God. I don't know what the message is deeper,
Yeah,
but I
what
mean,
exactly? What is that? What is the experiment? Like, I've heard a
yeah.
couple different theories on this, but there's really no context. There's nothing, no context clues that I could read in the game that really tell you anything but this being a loop-like experiment that just seems like them fucking with you. I can't even think further of it. Can't pull it apart even more.
I think it's mind control was the only thing I could think of. That
But
they're
to what
creating
end?
this.
To what
Yeah.
end is the blob? What do they call it? A meatball? The
The blob,
meatball.
I think.
Yeah.
The thing that it looks like me, it's this mass of limbs and stuff. I mean, as a unrelated side story, I was working in a hotel, and one of my duties was to clean the hot tub, and we had something float up that was very similar to that, which I went and took looking for the giant to find out what it was. And we had one of these snooty porters went and put his finger in it and proclaimed it's soap. Soap. And it was about, I don't know, about 3 hours later, and the giant finally shows up and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's fat that floats up from people's fat asses in the hot tub that causes that." Which made me feel really great, the fact that I got this bastard back from being such a snob by making him shove his finger in human fat and eat it. So I guess that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a mass of fat and limbs that's been given this subconscious. I don't know if it creates these clones out of it, whether it's like the Queen in Aliens. And the way Kim was obviously describing the secret level, it kind of makes me think of the Wizard of Oz now, that we peek behind the curtain and all we find is just a frail old man. It's not the mythical wizard that we were expecting. We weren't expecting some sort of big reward, but, we're essentially being punished for our curiosity.
Well, I mean, in general, it's just really messed up, I think. It's like you can say, some people can say, like, that secret ending and the result of it is mind blowing. What? He was mind controlled the whole time,
Hmm.
and that didn't make sense. But why would he just keep going,
Right.
But he's mind controlled. That kind of explains a lot of stuff. But at the same time, I mean, if you've gone through so much of the game to get all of the orbs and these little tiny little spots and going out of your way to get them, and this is your ending, well, some people might find it anticlimactic. Like, what sort of
Yeah.
ending is this? Like, you just wasted my time. Like, if this was a movie, this is what I would say. Because when I watch movies where the end game is that the easy way out is just kill off everybody. I always like I'll go on a rant and I'll be like, what is this stupid garbage? But I didn't say that about this game because I felt like there was something a lot deeper to think about if you played the first ending, which I think most people finish playing first
Yeah.
before they try the secret level. Just because the orbs are so out of your way, and unless you're like super into like digging into deep places, but you're probably not going to get all the orbs in the first run.
It was really hard. There were parts that I was like, really trying hard to do that, and then I got to a part that I was really stuck on somewhere down in the depths of the sea, trying to find one of those orbs, and I just couldn't figure out how to get to it. And I think I spent like a half an hour, 45 minutes on it, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to keep this for the second run through. What do you guys feel about secret areas that aren't just gotten to by collecting something in the game, but you have to do some crazy extrapolated series of button pushes. You have to
I
do like passcode on that door to get into it.
It's based on that music, I think. Rewinding on one of the next one, the orbs, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a musical piece that you have to recreate. I didn't have time to play the. I actually just watched the secret level being played.
Yeah.
So yeah, button pushing to that, like, I think that it depends on how you view it, I guess, in a sense that if I don't really remember how that puzzle was solved because I just don't.
It's
But
all over the place.
yeah, but I mean, but yeah, like it's because I wasn't playing it, right? I watched someone's playthrough, so it's a lot more
Sure.
fuzzy than if I actually played it myself, which I will go back and do. But
Yep.
for things like that, I find that if you're a secret level, I guess the reward is like I found that meaningless to do that just because you already have to go through all that trouble to collect
That's
what,
what I
like 10
mean. Yeah.
orbs, right? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're still sitting there and you're like, what the heck is this supposed to mean? And well, how do I get through this stupid door? Couldn't I just
Right.
push through? Because you went through all this stuff, right? And
Right.
then this is when people will find it anticlimactic because it's like you go there, you pull a plug, and boom, that's the end.
Exactly.
What? And then you're
Exactly.
like,
Like you go through all of that, and I feel like that too is anticlimactic. So, the secret thing that you're seeking out that's supposed to give you some perspective on the game as a whole, especially if you're trying to dig deeper into the truth and whatever, to get there just seems like a lot of busy work to me. I really like the game and I like the story that it's telling and everything, but I've never been a Chivos hunter. I've never been someone that like really wanted to 100% every game. I just wanted to get as much out of the game that I feel satisfied with. And I feel like if I was to go that far, why make that door so hard, so difficult to get through? Not only are you collecting things, but you also have to do some crazy amount of button pushing and bullshit to get in there for something that I think that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe in my perspective, maybe it's a little more anticlimactic to someone else. Maybe it would be mind blowing, but I've seen Blade Runner 100 times. I don't really need mind blowing to know people are replicants or know that the world is mind controlling you.
Yeah, for the amount of work that you put into the shiny hunting, you
Yeah,
kind of want a little bit more of a reward. And like yourself, Greg, it's just I'm not one of these people who has to go and find every little bit. Like I don't have to go and find all the bobbleheads on Fallout. I
right.
don't have to like on GTA. I can't be bothered to go around finding all the briefcases when there's other things I could be doing.
Of course, you could be
Um,
playing another game instead of
yeah, exactly.
replaying
You
it
could be
to
on to the
find all
next
the
thing.
secrets. Yeah.
I just didn't feel that Inside drew me in enough to justify spending more time than I needed to on the main sort of storyline. I felt that the main storyline was drive me forward enough, and I didn't need to be taking diversions to obviously delay me from getting to where I needed to be.
So last time in Limbo, for listeners and viewers who didn't listen to it before, which you should. The thing is that last time we talked about the price tag on Limbo. Inside has a significantly higher price tag, and I personally thought like for the story it was worth it, but I don't know if you guys thought that it was worth it, like for a 3 hour game.
Like, both of
Uh,
these are similar. For me, definitely. For me, it's definitely worth it. I think that the experience makes up for what you're paying for. It's $20, right? Or what is it? Is it similar in Canada? Is it 25?
We had to pay 27.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
so
almost like it's like half price of like a little less than half of like a AAA game. So
Right.
it's pretty significant. Like I looked at the price and I was like, hmm, why?
Yeah. Because we had also been talking about it for like a week or two, and like I was getting excited about it, so I
Yeah.
was like, the day before, I was like, "Fuck, is this thing gonna be? Is it gonna be a $30 game? Like how much is it gonna be?" Yeah, I was worried.
it was £12, so it's cheap.
Jesus
12
Christ,
pounds is cheap. How much is it convert? I don't know the conversion
I
rate.
don't know.
it's
He's $1.50 for the pound. So
right,
just go
$1.50.
from there. So
yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I could bait for what you were paying. I could
Yeah.
get the game and get a snack as well.
Okay.
So you know, at least one thing wouldn't disappoint me. So that was good.
Okay, so how about now since we've gone through this? So what are the ratings you guys would give it?
I'm going to stick with what I gave for Limbo. It's still a 3.5. The length of the game didn't bother me because obviously we got a game such as Firewatch, which again are similar sort of length and the same sort of price point. But there's certainly more of a story than we had with Limbo, which I appreciated. The Rampage levels are probably up there with some of my favorite video game moments, certainly of this year, if not of all time. And it's certainly something I would like to see developed into its own thing. The Monster on the Loose game. Um, perhaps with a slightly cleverer title than that, but
Nope, nope. That's the
no.
perfect title. You know what you're getting with that title. I'm gonna say. I said in the last episode that with Limbo, over the years since it came out in 2010, it's kind of waned. I can see a little more of the cracks and the flaws with it. Though there's still really clever puzzles in there and great set design that I really go back to that are kind of burned in my mind when I think of that game. If someone says Limbo to me about that game, it's just evocative to me. I remember parts, especially with that spider and everything. So it's still fresh in my mind playing Inside, and there are sequences that are as burned in my head that are so evocative. The underwater parts, obviously the mermaids that I've said were scary as hell, and just being in your little ship all alone, just a solitary light, making your way through those depths, and then obviously the meatball blob at the end, and there are really smart turns in here, really smart little puzzles to play, and I think that is what reminds me the most of like Portal 2 is those elements that have the mind control remind me of parts of Portal 2 where you really have to think outside the box. When you get to parts of Inside that are deep in the factories and you're having to use like 10 or 12 or 15 drones. I think to get into a doorway you need to get like 21 or 22 drones together and compile them all onto the elevator and take them with you everywhere. And it's just it's really right now in my mind. It's still fresh. These moments, these little snapshot moments. So like right now, regardless of 6 years from now when we revisit this and rate it, I'm going to say 4.5 because I think that it's the flaws are not as don't pull me too much out of the game in the way that my replay of Limbo has. And even with the ending, which I think is probably where I'm taking the point 0.5 off of, and it's, kind of an anticlimactic ending, and even an anticlimactic special area, if you want to go that far. I think that the concept and the gameplay still trump that for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for me, I'm definitely going with 4.5 also. Just because just think about the conversation discussing the theory we had. That was like,
Yeah.
that's exactly a perfect example of why this game is so memorable in the sense that this discussion will be for every player that's going to play it. And no matter 6 years down the road, and this is a new game to you, you're still going to enjoy these things. And those tense moments that build up really like when I watch someone play this playthrough, and same with me playing it, I still felt the same intensity as like regardless if I was playing it or not. And that shows like a really really clever atmosphere and just building, just putting in an almost perfect formula for creating a mood that just kind of like captures the player itself. So yeah, 4.5 for me.
In that respect, it brings us to the end of another edition of Game Warp. We'd like to thank our special guest reviewer, Greg, for joining us to obviously discuss Inside with us this evening.
Yep, thank you.
Obviously, if people want to come and find your stuff, where's the best place to come and find you?
I'm up on Twitter as Mr. Greggles, MisterGreggles. The two podcasts that I do, Debatable Podcast and All the Pieces Matter, are both on iTunes, and they're on Tumblr, debatablepodcast.tumblr.com, and All the Pieces Matter is at wirepod.tumblr.com. I don't know if we mentioned it. It's a retrospective of the HBO's The Wire, so that's why it's called WirePod.
Yeah, and you'll be able to find all that information in the description box below. So this wraps up the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your feedback and recommendations. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read more gaming reviews and news bits. To get gaming news and releases every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. To catch our episode on the go, you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Podomatic, and recently Satchel. So that wraps up this episode. Bye-bye.